Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Well, today we are going to be looking at doilies. Now, I have done another video on these. I will link those videos at the end of this one so that you can click on them. Otherwise, if you just have a search as well, I will try and link them down below. But doilies. Now, so many different kinds that you may have available to you. These ones here are from a cheap and cheerful shop here where I live. These are pretty thin, pretty flexible, but that can also be a good thing at times as well. Now, of course, you are able to purchase doilies as well, and this is some of the gorgeous mint colored ones. These are from Doodlebug, and these are the mint color. These are the minis. Now, they come in so many different colors. I couldn't resist purchasing these. These are also fairly thin as well, so great to do folding and things with, and they are also going to create great backgrounds. But that's another option. Now, also in your stash, you may have some sort of die cut that is like a doily. Now, this is not necessarily doily. It's called the Princess Circle from Gina Designs, and this is, I think you could use this in place of a doily. Now, I have cut this out of heavyweight cardstock, so it's a little trickier to fold, but you could also just cut this out of even copy paper, and that would make a great doily as well. Basically, what I'm saying is there are always options to, find another way to do it. And just because we don't have exactly what is on screen, it doesn't mean that you can't recreate this. Now, I have this gorgeous die that cuts these little dresses, and these fell out of the package, and I have been meaning to create something like this for ages and really wanting to. My daughter thoroughly enjoyed creating a lot of these alongside me too. So I have these gorgeous dresses, but we are actually going to create some doily dresses today. Now, this turquoise color, this is Sea Glass from Gina K. This is what I was thinking. This is I want it to be basically sort of one color and maybe white. But anyway, I wasn't sure where I was going with it, but I want to show you a few different ways that we can fold these doilies to create a gorgeous little dress. Now, all these little pieces falling out were driving me crazy, but I am going to do this on a black background so that hopefully you can see this a little bit better. I do realize this is tricky to see. Now, I'm folding the bottom part here over about, 2/3 of the way, not quite in half. And then fold it over to the edge of the pattern. I would say sort of halfway in between that fold. And then when we turn it up this way, this actually creates a gorgeous dress. And what I often like to do is to fold over the top little bit here, and that is going to create the waistline of your dress. And so obviously I am adding this onto a dress that's already made, a die cut. You may even like to make your own, but you can see there one super simple way that we have created the bottom dress part out of a doily. And then this part here, you can choose whether you glue this down, you can choose whether you have this slightly wider or slightly skinnier. I'm actually going to end up cutting off the dress from underneath just so that I'm not restricted by how wide the doily dress needs to be. But anyhow, there is one option. And as I said, all of these are super simple, not complex folding at all. That's generally not my style. I like to keep it pretty simple. Right, we have the next one. This one you only need half a doily for. So I'm going to roughly cut this in half. Now, actually, my line was really not straight there, but that's okay. We don't go for perfection. We don't need perfection. I'm going to put this over about 3/4 or so of the way. I'm sort of lining it up with the different pattern. So then once you've got this folded over that way, I'm actually going to fold this right back on itself. So this dress is going to have 4 different sort of zigzag layers going all the way down. And as a side note, this also makes a great Christmas tree for when that time comes. But for today, it's going to be a dress. And then I turn this over, so you can see there's the front that we just folded this little flat back here, and then turn it over to the back, and then fold this one backwards, and that creates our 4 layers of our little dress. Now, if you want to, you can also sort of ink these up as well to separate all of that white a little bit. And then I find how wide the dress is, the waist is, and then I sort of pinch it with my thumbs so that I can fold it over there. Of course, you can cut this off as well. And then, as I said, I will end up cutting the bottom of the dresses. I know it's a little bit sad, but I promise it's okay. And that will mean that we can sort of add on what we want without having to adhere to the original width of the dress. So there you go, there's another one ready to go. And then I want to show you another one as well. All of these, as I said, are super simple. This one here, I fold it over coming in this way, and then I basically take the left hand side and sort of do a similar fold. No measurements, no, rhyme or reason. This one actually ends up being somewhat similar to the first one that we did. But yeah, just really quick and simple. Again, I find the waist of the dress and I pinch that piece over at the top. Of course, there are so many ways to make doily dresses. This is just a few. I'm going to show you one more as well, where we're going to sort of pinch it in and cinch it in around the waist. But yeah, there are heaps and heaps of different ways out there. I'm just doing the nice, easy ones. These are just my favorite sort of go-tos. This one here, I've folded it again so that you can see the two different layers of the bottom of the dress. And then this time we just pinch them in little darts, and don't worry if these aren't perfect. You can sort of readjust them all the time. I find it easiest to sort of fold forward and then fold back. And these sort of create these little pinches, these little darts. And you can sort of scrunch them in as tight as you want them to be or as loose as you want them to be. And then I just fold the corners in behind it. And this one is really good for quite a lot of dimension. It does make quite a little puffy little dress to go on the bottom. And of course, I am just keeping these all in white, but wow, if you included colour or sprays or inking, I showed that a little bit in my other video as well, which you have probably already seen by now, but lots of different ways that you can add colour to these, and that would be spectacular too. But for this type, I'm actually going to keep these pretty simple and white, and I'm going to show you how I finish off these cards. I'll show you a couple of finished cards so that you can see how I would turn these into a finished card. So truly I could have picked any of them that I created. I was happy with all of the little dresses, so let's turn them into the cards. This is the layered vintage labels from Honeybee Stamps, and even though I do love this gorgeous big frame, I'm actually going to cut this out and just use the centerpiece here because I think that will create a nice background for me. As I said in the beginning, I wanted one to be sort of a turquoisey colour, this sea glassy colour. I guess it's a light blue turquoisey kind of colour. So I just come in with a really light hand. I don't want there to be too much happening because I'm actually going to use the same coloured ink to bring in some detail. Now, obviously you can use another colour if you like, but having simplifying things and using just one colour works well for me. Whilst I've got the ink out, I am also going to put the dress together, and I will need to create a little something with some of the ink as well. Everything's going to coordinate pretty nicely based around this one colour. And again, you can choose any colour. This could be bright pink, hot pink, it could be black, it could be grey, it could be any colour. As I said, it's a little bit sad, but I cut the bottom of this dress off, and you could just snip it straight across. Don't ask me why I cut it in that direction, but anyhow, I have this is one of the stencils from Stamperia. This is the Vicky P, one of hers, and so I'm not sure what this one's called, but I will try and track it down, and of course I will link it in the description box down below. And then this is where I'm going to add in some of that detail. So this is exactly the same coloured ink, except for I'm coming in with a little bit more of a heavy hand, and it's got these gorgeous little swirly patterns. These stencils are quite cool because it has music notes, it has the swirly patterns, it has some details, sort of a couple of stencils in one. Now one side was a little bit darker here and one a little bit lighter, so I actually came back in and matched it up, and then I'm going to add just a tiny bit more ink so that they match a little bit more evenly. As I said, one colour, and I get two different shades there with that little bit of pattern detail. You could do this with any stamp, any stencil, anything that you want to add a little bit more detail. Even some rub-ons in the background would be nice. Now this is where I'm going to bring in the same sea glass colour. Now I'm going straight direct to paper to get as dark as I can, but honestly, I felt like this wasn't quite dark enough. So I am going to bring in some of the, I think it's Tranquil Teal, and so I will add in a little bit of this. It's just sort of a darker shade of that, but it probably would have been fine just as is, but I added in just a tiny bit, so it's a little bit darker. But it seems like it's in the same colour family, it's just a shade or two darker than the sea glass. And then all I'm doing here is just freehand cutting a little strip of cardstock, a plain strip of cardstock. I add some glue to the bottom of my dress, and that gives me somewhere to glue it onto. And then you can see that actually my dress is a tiny bit wider than the waist itself. But once I add around this little strip, I just bend it around there and bend those pieces around to the back. Everything matches up nicely. It accentuates the little waist here beautifully, and I just add a little bit of glue around the back to secure that in place. It also adds a pop of colour and it also marries together the dress and the top part of the dress nicely, I think. I have this tiny little bow that I also die cut out of that same piece of cardstock that we did direct to paper, just so it matches, and it does sort of sink in a little bit with a little sash around the middle, but that's okay. It's a cute little bow, and I will pop that on, and of course from here it's sort of all the little finishing touches really. Now I'm going to put this onto my card base, but I did want my card base to have an extra layer. Now we've already got a bit of cardstock and a few layers going on, so I'm just going to do my old trick here where I add in the ink, and I'm just going to use some low tack tape. This is the mint tape from scrapbook.com, and I'm going to use that Tranquil teal colour, the slightly darker of the two, and go around the edges here just really quickly, and it's a very thin edge that I'm creating. I can use one piece of tape to get around all 4 edges, and I've also got the back of that piece of copy paper that has protected the back of my card. Pop that aside to dry for just a second. Now, as for a sentiment, honestly, this could have done without one. I think it would have been a gorgeous card without. You could add in a little sentiment. You could just add a verse or a sentiment inside of the card. But I do have this little one here from Altenew. This is part of the Plants and Vases, and I thought I would just add on this little sentiment. There's a couple of much smaller ones in here that will fit nicely. The first one is going to be a birthday one, and this actually went out to one of my daughter's friends, this card. And so I have stamped that with my stamping platform just because at this point we'd put in some of the work, and then I'm going to put this directly flat down onto my card base, and it's going to sit just nice and square. I did think if you pushed it up a little bit more that you could have sort of a banner or a thin strip, or even just stamp your sentiments straight onto the bottom, onto the card base, but I was happy with it being on the teal as well. Then I did pop the dress up on a few little foam dots just because it really is the star of the show. And then it fits in nice and snug there right in the center. And then a few little finishing details that I'm going to do. You could absolutely leave it here. I think leaving it here looks gorgeous and looks finished, but there's a couple of things I just couldn't resist. So one of those is I'm going to take some little rhinestones. Now these are from Kaisercraft, I think, maybe. I've had these for quite some time, but they don't match perfectly, but actually when they're on the card they look beautiful. And I do think a little bit of shiny, a little bit of something that catches your eye when you move it in the light, particularly on like a birthday card or a happy occasion card, is really just something that fun. It just adds that extra little detail. So I'm going to add a couple of these going along the bottom of her dress just to sort of, as I said, catch the light. And it also separates out those layers just a little bit. Actually, my daughter, when she gave this to a friend, ended up putting one of those little rhinestones in the middle of the bow as well. My daughter ended up making the same card as me alongside of this, and then she sort of went off on her own creative journey and made her own little dresses and her own designs. And then I also made another one because I couldn't resist. These were super gorgeous. So I also made a pinkish colored one, again just using one colored pink this time the whole way through, and I added in a couple of those little clear little gems along the bottom of her dress and in the middle of the bow. But there are my 2 finished cards for today. I used a different background one for the pink as well, the arches, the A2 arches from scrapbook.com. That's that die. But other than that, thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.